Welcome to RCR Wireless News 2016 Mobile World Congress coverage. I'm here with Jose Antonio Rios. He is CEO of Celistics. Jose Antonio, we spoke at last year FutureCon in Brazil and last September, if I'm not wrong, and we are in February right now. So I'd like to know what changed from in this couple of months.
Sure. Just in a few words to talk about the changes. First of all, it's good to see you again, Roberta. And a lot has happened. 2015 was not a good year for Latin America in general. I mean, we all know the many economic crises that happened in a lot of countries, including Brazil, is the biggest one and the most important one, biggest economy in the region. Also, Mexico suffered a lot from the devaluation. We had a lot of inflation that is a result of the devaluation as well, and we have a limitation on the economic growth. However, we are in a segment in our economies that is a growth segment. Why? Because it hasn't been fulfilled yet. I mean, we are talking about in the next 4 or 5 years, 50% of the people will have access to internet through their phones. 50%. So that still leaves us the other 50% for after 2020. So that's just one figure to demonstrate that we're in a growth segment in spite of an economy that is shrinking at the time, and that this is something that changes around in time. They go through cycles, as we all know, so we will have a better cycle. But the cycle for this product and for these services is still of growth. And some of the things that have happened is that we have an increased competition into our country with more and more brands coming in, not only the powerful traditional brands, but some Chinese brands. Also, some non-Chinese brands are coming into our countries with specific features, and that is very interesting. We have the desire of people to have internet to their phones. That has changed the process from a lot of feature phones that were sold in some countries way over 50%, in other countries less than 50%. This year those percentages have shrunk substantially because everybody wants a smartphone. They can't afford sometimes the very high priced smartphones, but they want a smartphone, because when you talk about why people want a phone today, a mobile phone today, they don't want it to talk. They don't want it to speak. That's the 5th reason why anyone wants to speak, to buy a mobile phone. They wanted to access the social service, the social networks in there. They wanted to download their movies. I mean, they wanted to connect to their family and friends. I mean, and then somewhere in 5th level comes to talk on a phone. So there's been a huge transformation. What has happened is smartphones have opened the range of prices. Some of them have come down to the $50, $60, $70, $80. There are some lower ones that I would not necessarily recommend for people that need a good service, but there also are smartphones lower than $50, and then you can choose also a number of plans from the operators, varying in different countries, for families, for this, with a common data pool that they share among the family, and people are into that. And I've said a number of times that what we really need is for the countries to take seriously that we need to get the internet to 100% of the population. And
No, I just wanted to add, I was yesterday at the GSMA press conference, and they were talking about, we have in Latin America region 360 million people that have network coverage, but don't count with the connection. They don't buy the service. So it's a huge potential of growing in the region. And I'm wondering, what does it represent to Celistics in terms of future potential growth? And in which country do you see more this trend?
Yeah, I think there is about an equal percentage in most of the countries of about 20% of the population, give or take, that do not even have access to coverage. And then you have the number of people who have coverage but don't have a phone. and that don't have a smartphone. So the potential for growth is enormous in the next 10 years. I mean, and I think phones are going to continue to change and to evolve. They're going to continue to get at lower prices with more services into that. Everyone will have to figure out what services do they want, and the same thing with the companies. How do we adjust the phone services to the company so that it can be with them? But the potential for growth is enormous. I would say we are not even at half of where we need to get. So how do we team up with the operators, team up with the manufacturers, so that we all together give a seamless service, first-class service, and make sure that we can reach all the last points or the smaller points in every geography that have not been touched today, and in a number of the cities where that has not happened. So our emphasis needs to be, let's get coverage, and after the coverage is there, then we have a tool to really incorporating those. Even from a cultural and educational point of view, which very few times we take in consideration, we look at what Mr. Zuckerberg is saying, well, that's fine from his commercial point of view, but from an educational point of view, what happens? Every child that is born today and doesn't have access to internet, it makes the gap grow, between those that are alert, that are trained, that have access to that, and that their world moves, in a world where internet works, and those who don't. And we have many of those in each one of our Latin American countries, and we need to make sure that all the powers at B that can inject into that do it, so that we have very few children that are going to grow without having been able to reach the internet services that abound in every country and in every language.
And you said about coming new brands to Latin America with, I guess, it's focused on entry levels or more cheap smartphone. How is the competition from your perspective? Because you do the logistic part of it, and how carriers and retailers are embracing these new brands?
Yeah, I think that there are many, many new competitors coming in. Some come in not at the lowest end, they come in with special features. One special feature that we see coming in the next 2 to 3 years is privacy. Evidently today there is a very high news worth of the fight of Apple against the U.S. courts, for privacy. That's for Apple customers, but not only Apple customer. Not everybody can be an Apple customer, and also non-Apple customers have the same sensibility. So there will be a number of phones that will be launched in the market that will have various ways of addressing privacy for the phone users. I think that's one. I think people want a reliable phone that can have service, and those people that sell phones at a lower level, and in some of our countries, a lot of those lower price phones don't come in legally. They don't have an homologation, from the operators. So what happens is you get them, you put a SIM card into them, you start talking, they seem fine, but then when you try to access the data network and global internet, it doesn't work. And then you go complain against the operator. Well, the operator had nothing to do with that. This was some guy with a briefcase that brought it over the border, into your country, and found a way to sell it.
And they are not homologated by a regulator in Brazil, Anatel.
The regulator, nor by the operator. So they don't have the coordinates to actually access the networks that exist. Because in a country like Brazil, you have the G2, you have the G3, the G4, you have all the networks. But the phones need to be capable to communicate with those networks. It's not just grabbing the phone and saying, hey, this is a nice phone, it has a good screen, and I like it, and it turns on very fast. How good is it if I can't communicate to the networks in my country,
And do you think that this illegal commercial is decreasing in Latin America?
No.
And why not?
Because there is always an opportunity. I mean, there are people that are moving from a feature phone in Central America. We sold hundreds of thousands of feature phones at $11, $12, $13. So now you're asking those same people to pay $50, for a smartphone. So therefore, they don't have the means to actually pay the $50, so they try to pay less. So if your phone has entered the country without paying customs, without doing any of those things, it costs less because they have paid less, And on top of that, maybe they obtained the phones at a bulk sale of some factory in China, so they got a very good price. So they make a lot of money. You think that you spend less, and in the end, you don't get the service that is the reason why you bought the phone. So you have to be aware of that.
So my last question is, what are you launching here at Mobile World Congress?
Well, one of the things that we have in mind is Brazil, because we think that in Brazil, although there is let's say a lowering of the economic factors and don't seem to be going very well from that point of view, we see that as a great opportunity. Opportunity because the quality that we have in our service of intelligent logistics and distribution are being appreciated, particularly at these times, that we keep that quality in our services. So we see that we are growing, and in the next few weeks, you're going to see some announcements related to that. And then also with the recharge program that we have with MobileWay, I mean, we have been working for about a year in Brazil. We're about to make some acquisitions in Brazil. We think this is the right time to do that, so that we don't grow just organically, but also inorganically, and position ourselves very well for the growth in Brazil. So Brazil is one of them. We're also into the distribution and creation of channels that are aligned with our main activities in the telecom area, of products that are a novelty in the telecom area, that are really well positioned from a price point of view, and that can be taken to Latin America first, not a year or 2 years after they get it to be in the United States, or they launch in the United States. So we have products like Trackimo. I mean, we have Bundle Dog, we have GigMe, we have a few companies that we are getting incredible products for Latin America that we're beginning to distribute in parallel with our phones that we've been doing so for 8 years.
Thank you a lot for this interview.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you.
Stay tuned at rcrwireless.com.